This is Don Nelson, editor of the Additive Report and host of the Additive Reporter video series. Today my guest is Ken Susnjara. He's founder, chairman, and CEO of Thermwood Corporation, which is an Indiana manufacturer of 3- and 5-axis CNC routers. They're used by the furniture, cabinet making, automotive, defense, and other industries. Thermwood also builds large-scale additive manufacturing systems. Thermwood's LSAMs, as they're called, have tables ranging from 5 feet by 5 feet to 15 feet by 40. The company's been around more than 50 years and it sells its products globally. Ken is also the author of 3 books, including one on additive manufacturing, which we'll talk about in a bit. Welcome, Ken. Before we talk about the book, give us some background on how Thermwood, a manufacturer of routers, got into building large-scale additive manufacturing machines.
Just a few years ago, we were kind of perfectly happy. Everything was clicking along. Had a nice business, not a great business, but a nice business making routers. And a man by the name of Byron Pipes called me up and said he'd like to come visit. I'd never met him. I had no idea who he was. He came down with another man, Lee Sargent. Turned out Byron is a world-renowned expert from Purdue University, and Lee had a company in Indianapolis that made composite parts for aircraft, and they introduced us to this idea of large-scale additive. They said they thought with our background and the things we knew that we would be ideal to be in that business, and so one thing led to another, and here we are. So it's kind of Byron's fault.
Byron's fault. Now, when was this? So when was the first LSAM made?
Probably, around 2015 maybe? 2016? Okay. Yeah, it hadn't been that long, 5-6 years ago. It took us, we normally did a lot of development. We had a lot of patents, a lot of new technology. We generally do that rather rapidly. This took us several years to do. It turned out to be a little more complex than it first looked.
The title of your new book is A Manager's Guide to Large-Scale Additive Manufacturing, Understanding a New Technology. In it, you focus solely on large-scale AM, and you give a mix of practical advice like the importance of drying your materials before using them, and then you kind of salt that in with what was involved in developing Thermwood's early systems. You told me one reason you wrote the book is because the market doesn't really understand additive manufacturing. Can you give us some examples of the misconceptions that are out there about additive manufacturing?
One of the original problems was that people believed that you could produce essentially everything using the process that you could make otherwise, but you could do it quicker and cheaper. Well, that's not the truth. The process has certain capabilities and certain limitations. And once you understand those, there are certain products that you can make with the process that make save you a ton of money, but you can't make everything with it. It's not that type of thing. So what I was trying to do is simply come up with something to provide a basis, just a background. Okay, here it is. Here's what the materials are like. Here's what you got to do to make it work. Here's how the processes work. And in a lot of cases, what I try to do is point to areas where there's a need that you have to handle. There's a problem that you're going to have to deal with. I cover how we dealt with it, but there may be other ways of dealing with it. But you got to recognize here's areas that you need to focus on, that you need to make sure you've got an answer to. And so that's part of it. I didn't want people jumping into this thing and missing some major point that could mess them up.
A number of times in the book, you talk about how you had to forge your own path because there was no pioneer. An example that I remember was one of the chapters was about slicing software, or you were talking about slicing software. And although, slicing software, of course, is critical to additive manufacturing, there was very little, if any, slicing software available for at the scale you were going to do it, large scale. So tell us how you went about grappling with that and solving that problem. How did you get the software that you needed?
Well, we started, we've written software. We've written some fairly sophisticated, almost artificial intelligence software to do furniture parts and cabinets and so forth. So we have a pretty powerful software group. However, what we've learned over the years is once you put a software package out, you are going to live with it forever. So we decided we did want to develop slicing software. So we went out and looked at everybody that had it. We got a hold of all the stuff that worked on desktop machines. Of course, none of that was going to work in an industrial environment. We got a hold of everyone who said they were in this slicing software business, visited with them, had them come to us, and so forth. And at the end, it didn't work. There was nothing that was going to be of the professional nature that we felt was going to be needed if you really wanted to move this thing into industry. So what we ended up doing is deciding, okay, we need to do this, but we ought to find someone who is a little more experienced with this. And so we searched around and we found some people who were part of a group that had written some major CAD/CAM software, and they were off on their own doing things. And so we set up a partnership with them. They had created some slicing software for other applications that were not polymer applications. And so we worked out a deal to buy the rights to that software and then began to adjust and modify it as we learned things. And that is part of the effort. It took a huge amount of effort to get that together and also to get it where it essentially works with the machine and with the way the process works. So, you know, that's kind of the effect we've had. Now we've now had a few other what I consider quite viable companies who've got an interest in making this kind of software, and we've been talking with them about trying to do some kind of a cooperative effort. But right now, that software is probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks for somebody wanting to get into large-scale additive.
I want to shift gears a little bit. Part of the book's title is Understanding a New Technology. Additive has been around for more than 30 years. Is it really still a new technology, or is it because it's unknown, relatively unknown, that makes it new? Or how would you define that?
Because the things that are happening today weren't happening a year or two ago. I mean, the technology that's used in large-scale parts is pretty much brand new. I mean, we've got over 60 patents on it already. If it wasn't new, that wouldn't happen. Okay, yeah, the concept of additive manufacturing has been around for a long time, but the actual practical implementation of it is pretty well new. And, you know, it was being done before we got into it, but it wasn't working. And once we got in, we were able to get the thing to actually function in industry. And this is kind of the first time I think that's happened. But if you were to look at what's running in industry right now, what additive systems are actually in daily production, you're going to find that the vast majority, if not all of them, are Thermwood LSAMs. That Thermwood LSAM technology is a brand new technology, and it's different. It's quite different than anything that's happened prior to it, and the whole print process is a bit more involved, a bit different than what people believed in the past. So it is a new technology.
Ken, thanks so much for your time. It's been great talking to you and learning about your book, learning a little bit about Thermwood, and hope to talk again sometime. If you're interested in reading Ken's book, it's called A Manager's Guide to Large-Scale Additive Manufacturing, Understanding a New Technology. It's available in paperback and digital form on Amazon.com. That's where I bought it. And so anyway, thanks for tuning in. This is Don Nelson. Please check out our social media channels and other videos. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.